slave labor has been an issue for many centuries. It's a worldwide problem which has been discussed a lot throughout the years. The dilemma caught the headlines again in 2000 when reports of slave labor on the world-famous chocolate brand Cadbury's cocoa farm surfaced in the media. Imagine being taken away your rights of free will and being forced to work without compensation. Long hours of hard labor, including the constant threat of punishment and inhuman working conditions. According to Anti-Slavery International, these are the main characteristics describing slave labor. Slavery affects men, women, and children, and is spread in communities that are less economically and socially developed. Even after a long history of trying to eliminate it, slavery is still a part of many people's lives today. An estimate of enslaved people in 2012 was around 24.9 million. This is a terrific number, which further underlines the severity of the issue and urgency to resolve it. This study has examined the ethical aspects of cocoa production in African countries and in particular how Cadbury has been associated with this matter. The topics that will be discussed are Cadbury's history, how slave labor has impacted the chocolate brand, and lastly how difficult it is to monitor working methods and conditions in African communities. The British company Cadbury is one of the biggest and most well-known names in the chocolate industry today. You all know their iconic logo and purple brand colors, right? It all started with John Cadbury opening his first shop in Birmingham in 1824. Next to tea and coffee, he offered an assortment of cocoa and drinking chocolates to his customers, which later became more and more popular around the citizens. After 7 years of selling cocoa products, Cadbury eventually shifted focus from being a retailer to manufacturing chocolate himself on a large scale by establishing his first chocolate factory in 1831. Cadbury has later on merged with several companies, and the latest happening was in 2010 when Mondelez International bought the company.
Cadbury has a long history with child labor and slave labor in general. Even though Cadbury today is mostly obtaining their cocoa beans from Ghana, in the beginning of the 20th century they were obtaining them from the Portuguese farms. Once it was discovered that the plantation owners were using their workers as slaves, Cadbury stopped having any businesses with them and switched to Ghana as a growing region instead. After that, investments were made in the farming communities in Ghana, and Cadbury ensured safe working conditions for their workers, as well as the purity of their products for their consumers. The problems, however, with slave labor seem to have remained. Nearly 100 years after Cadbury's first dilemma with slave labor, the media started to report about the industry labor practices again. Now, child labor in the Ivory Coast was a problem. Due to those revelations, the United States decided that from now on, companies in the chocolate industry must label their products with slave labor free to prove their innocence. The challenge then for every company was to follow the new rules in order to not lose their consumers, reputation, and their profits. No one can argue that Cadbury is one of the biggest chocolate brands in the world, and the association of it with slavery could have a detrimental effect on their reputation of being ethical. In order to prove to the world that Cadbury is concerned with the welfare of the workforce in Ghana and other farming communities, the company decided to join Fairtrade Foundation in 2009 and to start using the Fairtrade label. The Fairtrade Foundation is an organization that strives to improve the working conditions of farmers and other workers, their trading position, and their overall living situation. If all standards are met, the products get the Fairtrade label, which ensures customers that the producers of the product were treated and paid fairly. Cadbury has been involved with other partnerships as well to develop the farming communities and to promote and support other companies in doing the same. In 2016, Cadbury, together with Fairtrade Foundation, announced that they will join the Cocoa Life program to support the development and the progression of cocoa communities. Due to the new partnership, Cadbury's products will not carry the Fairtrade label anymore, but use the cocoa life tag instead, while staying accountable to the same goals.
Here is challenge 3 and 4. For a long time, the problem of child labor has not been effectively solved. Therefore, the cocoa industry has adopted the Cocoa Industry Protocol and promised to establish a credible global industry standard system and require relevant test reports. Another big challenge is that cocoa beans cannot be traced back to the source. There is a great quality risk because there are millions of farms in Africa. In order to ensure the quality of cocoa production, the organizers came up with several. The cocoa beans on the farm are collected in a town and then registered and managed to achieve the purpose of testing quality.
As this study researched, child labor and slavery have been a problem for Cadbury on multiple occasions in time. The main reason being the growing demand for low-cost chocolate products, which forced many local farmers to engage in these inhumane techniques to still make a living. Also, regulations were missing that could have stopped these developments. In the year 2000, the company addressed the issue by implementing such guidelines. But still, there was more that could have been done. From 2009 on, Cadbury joined several organizations that strive to improve working methods and living situations of farmers in Western Africa. Their efforts resulted in positive developments in the local education and health system, as well as improvements in infrastructure. Therefore, after continuous collaboration with these institutions, Cadbury was able to rebuild its reputation. Lacking traceability of cocoa beans in the supply chain was one of their main issues. When sold to a middleman, the cocoa beans often get intermingled or registered incorrectly, but also errors occur when transmitting data into a database. As a result, the origin of cocoa beans gets more and more unclear. That knowledge is important because it provides information about quality, growing methods, and working conditions. To counterfeit these issues, there are multiple solutions available: reward systems, investments, or a local subsidiary. In conclusion, Cadbury faced associations with slavery and child labor several times. The difficulty of monitoring working conditions in Africa can be stated as the main reason. The study's goal was to educate on the topic of inhumane working conditions in the chocolate industry, as well as to examine and solve the challenges Cadbury faced due to these developments. Cadbury has taken on several actions to stop the use of child labor and slavery on their cocoa farms. The work that has been done and will be done from now on is going to ensure that the improvement will continue.